All right, so, okay, we have a few people here. Now I think is a pretty good time to get started. I'm not going to take up too much of your time, but I do want to make sure we cover all of the finer points that I'm sure you're likely stressing out about a little bit, right? So I will go to screen share. Give me just a sec. All right, everybody see okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. Yay. All right, so I like to collapse these. I didn't know if you know you can do that. I prefer to. Okay, so today, your checkpoint is pretty straightforward as previous days, but I have remarks on each team that I'm not going to share individually because some of that is, I think, a little bit more personal to the team's information. But just know that when you open up the discussion, it is you and your team, where I have shared with you your feedback on your team report. The reports have been graded, so you should have a pretty good idea if there are any changes that you need to make that will just help you with your team presentation overall. So I don't think that it's a waste of time to like double check and make sure you kind of go through that and then just like resubmit it for a better grade. Yay, if that was your case. Otherwise, you probably have a review that says you guys are good to go, meaning the content in your report is sufficient enough to start working on your team presentation, which is almost essentially just going through your team report and presenting it to us. Now, for today's checkpoint, what I want you to be careful of is that what I want you to make sure that you do today is to let me know that you've downloaded Zoom. Everybody in this call has done that, so you guys are good to go there. And then let me know if you have met with your team or plan to meet with your team, and when you meet with your team, just give me that heads up, like, yeah, we're gonna talk about it on Friday. That works. That is your checkpoint for your attendance. Now below that, for the 10 points, just like previous checkpoints, this is your team checkpoint, and everybody shares these 10 points. I only need one per group. Don't need everybody to respond to each of these. So basically like before, only make sure that you've downloaded Zoom, and if you are unsure, reach out to me and I will help you. Now, let's get to the good stuff. The team presentation. Yay. All right. So normally these team presentations are between 5 and 10 minutes, but some of our groups are larger. I think video, for example, we have closer to 9 people, and so you're going to need more time. If you are just 1 or 2 people in a group, I would not make you talk for a whole 10 minutes sharing 2 jobs. That starts to become like more work for some than others. So I have shared with everybody, along with your feedback in that conversation or in that discussion, how long your team presentation should be. Now you'll have a window of time. It'll say something between 5 and 10 or 10 and 15 minutes. The lower number is what's required of your team. The higher number is where I'm going to cap you. So during the call next week, I will share with you when you've met your required meeting time, which is usually a cue for a lot of you guys to start, okay, let's wrap this up. We did what we needed to do. We'll wrap up our thing, conclude, and then we'll call it, or get through the rest of your presentation. Now, this one is a little bit different than previous weeks in that it is required of you to attend the Zoom call to get credit for your team. Now, let's pretend that you show up, but somebody on your team does not. Does that affect your grade? No, it doesn't. That person who doesn't show will get their grade, and you will have your grade. Does that make sense? The grade you receive for your team presentation is the shared grade for everybody who attended. So it is important to make sure that you come to that call. It's just like this at 12:30 a week from today. And part of the checkpoint is to acknowledge that, right? Like make sure that we know we have to be present and we will be here next week. Okay, moving on. You must be present to receive credit. Attendance will be taken at the Zoom call live. What's cool about that is that I can just take a look at everybody who's in the call and do a quick attendance roll sheet, so you're good to go. But you need to stay for the whole meetings for all of the presentations, because there is a follow-up assignment that requires you to have seen them in order to answer these questions. Don't worry, they're mostly opinion-based, like what were you surprised about? What did you find particularly interesting? What didn't you know, etc. Okay, So each team is responsible for teaching the rest of us, yay, about your assigned industry sector. This is where the rubber hits the road. This is where you take what you've done so far and we're going to put it into an actionable task of presenting to us. I do not need everyone to speak. One person can speak for the whole team if that's what's comfortable, or everybody can take turns, or 3 out of 7 of you can talk, whatever. However you choose to go forward with that is fine by me. I know that sometimes people are very uncomfortable presenting, and I want to encourage you to go ahead and try to step out of your comfort zone in this space for that, because presenting is a skill that is going to need to be confronted at some point or another. And frankly, if you can get over that crux earlier, the better it tends to be for your career overall. There's something kind of commanding about respect when you do presentations in your field. You start to take on roles of leadership as knowledgeable folks, and it's really great for networking opportunities, say like at conferences or leading discussions in other arenas. So while it might not be part of the job every day in a typical work environment for say like a UI UX designer or a game developer, addressing the skill of speaking in front of people is very valuable. And in this class, I don't grade you for being nervous, right? Like now it's okay. You can stutter, you can say a lot. You can push through some of that discomfort, because the only way to get better at that is to practice. So if you are somebody who struggles, I want to encourage you to try, but you don't have to for a grade. Okay. All right. As a team, step 1, decide what you want to say. You won't have much time. It's usually between 5 and 10 minutes for most groups, but I think a few groups might be a little bit more depending on how many people are in it. And that's not very much time at all. Most of the time you're going to have an average of about 1 minute to 2 minutes per person to speak, and that flies by. So you're going to want to decide what you're going to say and for how long you're going to try to say it. As a team, decide what you want to show. Now, I don't require you to have visuals for this presentation, meaning you don't have to give me a PowerPoint, you don't have to use one, but my gosh, does it make it so much easier. It really does. A lot of presentation software, like I use a lot of Google Slides. And if I were to make a new one real quick, Google Slides, right here. You can put in the things you want to say down here. Don't forget to say this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And you can have just pictures up here, or some of the data, or maybe even some of the content from your reports that you would like us to follow along with. Now, if this is your first time giving a presentation like this, man, use this tool. It's going to help you. I often think of them, especially when I start making presentations, like cue cards. I will just add the slides I need for my bullet pointed subjects, and then fill in slides in between to make sure it stays structured. And I'm a very visual person, so I love using pictures in a lot of my talks. So that's personal advice. Usually you don't want to have walls of text up here that you're saying, because then what's the point of the visual? Right? Usually visuals are intended to kind of help you send your point home a little bit harder. People remember visuals over words and walls of text. And if you are going to have information text up here, it almost has to be explicitly exactly what you're saying, or else you're asking me to read while listen to you, and I can't comprehend both trains of thought at the same time, even if they're similar. For example, if I had the alphabet up here and then I started listing off numbers and you're trying to take on both, it would just mess up your brain. So don't do that. Okay. Team member roles, timeline. Determine who is going to be speaking, one or several of you, all of you, are you taking turns? Who is writing the script? If you're using visuals, who's compiling them? When are you guys getting together to do it, if you are getting together to do it? And when are you going to script it and practice it? So you'll want to connect after the script has been written, or at least bullet pointed. Sometimes just an outline is sufficient for a script, but you'll want to practice it. Meaning getting together on a Zoom call for, I think they're 45 minutes if you're using a free account, which I think everybody here is, to like try to practice what you're going to say. it wouldn't take 45 minutes for the call when we do it. It'll be between 5 and 15 minutes, depending on how big your team is. So practice. Get comfortable with using the screen share features. I don't actually know if you can see too much of my screen when I have, for example, let me see. I'm going to do the screen share again. I'm going to see if you can see it. I don't think you can. Do you see at the top the Zoom UI interface that I'm hovering over? You don't see it? Okay. Well, there's a control panel that looks very much like the one on the bottom of the screen when you click screen share. And you'll want to maybe practice before we do this with each other, doing a screen share, and maybe even who's going to start screen sharing and what we'll see as you go forward. Okay. So get comfortable using Zoom. Now, I'm not going to grade you on presentation of like what you wear, right? I'm not treating it quite like a job interview, but I recommend go ahead and BSing like the rest of us do and put on a nice cardigan with your jammy pants and slippers. Just see if you can feel it. Honestly, it feels kind of good. You get a little professional vibe because that's what it really is professionally, like working from home. Okay, so do we have any questions so far about what to expect for next week? Do we have to show our face during a presentation? No. No. You might have to do some screen share, but you shouldn't have to show your face. Good question. Any other questions? Well, that was super easy. I honestly expected everybody here to have a slew of questions because you're worried about next week. But it doesn't sound like it. Well, I guess y'all really are gangsters. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Then in that case, I'll go ahead and officially dismiss you. Anybody can hang back if you have any questions on, say, grades or expectations or what we need to do for next week. Okay. All right. Okay.
Bye.
Bye. I'll see you then.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.